Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and I am behind schedule on this Sunday because I went to my son's travel ball game, and then his mom relieved me, which normally she gets mad if she has to relieve me on Sunday because that means I do the morning game, and usually they do 2 more games. So she gets 2 games, I get 1. But I had something else I had to come back to do too, so it's just the way things fell out. We got a $3.05 XRP, and today I'm going to show you why crypto was created. It should be very clear to you by now. Some of us called this way back 5-7 years ago, while everybody else was talking about green candles and believing in the Satoshi Nakamoto, and this was all libertarian and all that. That's never what this was. I've tried to tell you many times over the years. I think myself and Brad Combs are 2 of the only people that have been telling you this from the start. Let's start here. Listen to what this guy says.
Call it the super monetary highway. This new currency and other that they're starting, of course, your friends in the gold world will already know about it. But China quietly has made the yuan gold tradable. It can be transferred. It is tradable into gold on the Shanghai money exchanges. But what they're also doing is setting up a whole series of, if you like, vaults for gold storage. One is already in Hong Kong. Another one is being planned and is under construction in Saudi Arabia. And others are planned elsewhere, so that if you choose or have gold, you can trade it on Shanghai, but take delivery in Hong Kong or somewhere else. This is going to be huge.
Okay, this should lay it all out for you right here. And I've said it many times. Crypto was created for national security reasons, okay? To strengthen the U.S. dollar, create new demand for U.S. debt, replace the petrodollar system, prevent World War III, and to pay off the national debt. That is what makes Bitcoin make sense, because it's never made any sense to me. I've told you 1,000 times. It makes sense that they would be doing the PR machine and all of that if the whole purpose was to pay off the national debt with it. But here's the beautiful thing for all the rest of us holders, even though that's really the only thing I think they're trying to do with Bitcoin. When Bitcoin goes to 1 to 10 million bucks, what happens to the other blue chip crypto, specifically the American cryptos? And I'm just talking about just as a result of that, not including utility or tokenization, any of that stuff. The ones with limited amounts that actually have utility and are going to be used, it's going to be a game changer. Listen to this. This guy gets it.
I think Enbridge and stable coins, as designed and imagined by the U.S., are competing forces. I think Enbridge and the success of Enbridge will accelerate de-dollarization, whereas stable coins with the Genius Act, which was a very ingenious move, pardon the pun, to find a way to stuff additional treasuries into virgin pockets that never existed before at a time when all the foreign central banks are selling their treasuries. So we've run out of buyers in the foreign market. The Chinas and Japans of the world, the UKs, they were the Saudi Arabias, they were the traditional buyers of treasury bills. The stable coin, the creation of the stable coins is a means to find because all stable coins need U.S. Treasury backing. That's the main backing to it, to keep it at par. And so the more stable coins you create and the more use they have around the world, the more demand for treasuries. And I guessed that right away when I came out. And did you see that thing that Russia said yesterday? Yeah. So Russia came out yesterday, one of their ministers came out and said, called the Ponzi scheme out. He said basically the U.S. is what they're doing is they found a way to create demand for treasuries by creating the stable coins. Once the debt is transferred to these stable coins, they will devalue the dollar. And he said, just like they did in 1933, because in 1933, the U.S. made it illegal to own gold, and you had to turn your gold in. And gold was priced at $27.60 an ounce. So every good citizen, not a lot of people turn in their gold, but the good citizens turned in their gold. What did the Fed do? What did the U.S. do next? They revalued gold to $35 an ounce, effectively screwing the American public to the tune of 67%.
And with the revaluation, I know Scott Bessent, he first dismissed the idea of that revaluation, but now he's changed his rhetoric a bit and saying, I don't see that happening. But do you see a situation where the Fed published a recent research paper that painting the potential scenario of that reality? Do you ever see a world where the U.S. does revalue gold and market to market from that old?
It's possible. I'm not sure it'll be their first move. I think because once they do that, they admit that gold has value. And so far, they've tried to avoid that, calling it a pet rock and a tradition or whatever they called it. But I think for the U.S., their hand will have to be forced because it's when it happens, it's going to be a very painful move for Americans. I mean, this transition to a new monetary system is not going to come without pain, like a lot of pain. America's lived high off the hog for decades and decades because it had the U.S. dollar status, reserve status. If that's taken away or you have to devalue the dollar dramatically, it just means higher inflation, higher interest rates, lower standard of living, and it's a national security issue. I'm telling you, I believe it's just as powerful as their military, and they're not going to take it lightly.
Okay, so you have that. Now, remember, this was, these are the guys that are buddies with Elon Musk. Then you got the guy, David Sachs, the crypto czar. I think that's him down there. Listen to this.
Now, why is that interesting? Well, it's interesting because on top of this halving, which
this is the reason that they're floating this whole Bitcoin is going to replace gold narrative, because it's to pay off the U.S. debt. They know that it's bull, that it's going to replace gold. They may replace the market cap of gold in the short run in order to pay off the U.S. debt with Bitcoin, but they're not going to replace gold, and they know it.
Theoretically, if history is a guide, we should see some price appreciation. Obviously, the other thing that's happened is we've commercialized Bitcoin, and we talked about this sort of as my big prediction for 2024, which is these ETFs are really going to allow Bitcoin to cross the chasm and have its sort of central key moment, right? And so if you apply the averages, and again, these are just averages, they're by no means predictions. Okay, so I just want to qualify that.
Yeah, this is not financial advice.
It's not financial advice. These are just guesses. Data. We took these and we applied it to the price of Bitcoin. And if you go to the next page, you start to see what could happen if you just take the average of the last few cycles. So because the first cycle was so extreme, and you start to...
so you're just doing cycle 2 and 3 here, to be clear.
Just the averages of cycle 2 and 3. And what you start to see is some really meaningful appreciation. And when I talked to Wences about this, how he explained it, which makes a lot of sense to me, is there are a lot of countries that will never look at Bitcoin credibly, even if they support it. The US may be one of those. But there is an increasing body of countries that will become dual currency. And they will look at their local currency, and then they will look at Bitcoin. And they will say both of these two...
They may become multi-currency, not just Bitcoin. XRP.
Things are needed. One, when you're transacting on a daily basis for random goods and services. And two, when you need to buy a permanent asset that needs to have residual value, you'll use something like BTC. And I think that's a very powerful concept. And if you look at what this price chart could indicate, is that if this thing starts to get to these levels of appreciation, it is going to completely replace gold. Now,
so they're saying 1.14 million Bitcoin this cycle. If that happens, that's what, a 4 to 7 times for Bitcoin. Then how many times do you think XRP goes, by the way? Here's Elon Musk talking about it. All comes back to the debt. That's why they're doing this whole narrative.
But at the end of the day, if you look at our national debt, which is insanely high, the interest payments exceed the Defense Department, War Department budget. And they keep rising. So if AI and robots don't solve our national debt, we're toast.
He left out the crypto part, but he knows it. Here was Trump. Remember when Trump said that maybe we'll pay off the debt?
Who knows? Maybe we'll pay off our $35 trillion, hand him a little crypto check, right? Well,
that was a tell. Brad Combs makes a good point. The only way to pay down the U.S. debt with Bitcoin is to issue digital asset bonds for it and other digital assets like XRP, ADA, XLM. This is the way the U.S. government acquire the assets through bond issuance, and it doesn't cost the taxpayer a penny. In fact, they profit alongside the U.S. government, and it doesn't crash Bitcoin or other assets in the process. I'm going to play this clip for you, and then we'll go into the private group. Folks, I was at a party last night watching the Georgia-Tennessee game, which Georgia did win. I'm not going to say go Dogs because I went to Auburn. I was pulling for Georgia versus Tennessee. Most of my friends are Georgia fans. But I overheard someone saying that, made a comment like, if crypto's still around in a couple of years, like it's some kind of scam or fad or whatever. Listen to this clip for you to understand the big picture of what's really going on here. I just laugh to myself when I hear those kind of things, but it tells you just how early we really are. The average person out there still does not understand what crypto is at all.
Well,
This is that David Strzelecki guy, and at the end of this, I've got a clip of him where he talks about XRP.
Got a little different take than you. I feel strategic Bitcoin reserve. I think the U.S. government is holding way more Bitcoin than the couple 150,000 coins that they say. Maybe they created it. And if what happens if Bitcoin goes up to, say, let's say it goes up to $50 million a coin, which isn't that much higher than it is now. What are we talking about? 500 times more? The U.S. government is the largest holder of Bitcoin, and they use that to either issue a stable coin backed by Bitcoin and then use that to pay down the debt. Say, guys, you can have zero interest, or you can have these stable coins and go do what you want with them. Or they just hand out the Bitcoin, pay off the debt, and then take the balance and recapitalize the Social Security system and a couple of others, and then walk away. I mean, I see that as the saving grace here. And it's easier than gold. We're just not going back on a gold standard, It's just
all right. So here's a couple of things to note. So I like where your head's at with this. One, the thing that I really recognize is that if you're an evil dictator or somebody that needs to flee their nation, you're for sure a Bitcoin person, because you can't take that gold and silver with you. I mean, fly it around, or it's heavy, right? So you have the ability to just put it up in the cloud. And so that's a lot of the volume that's been coming in right now. I believe that Bitcoin is a real reserve. I believe that, the only 21 million coins out there, my guess is we're probably able to, only really access 16 million of those in the end, probably 5 million or more. You lose your lead keys, you lose your crypto. So I think that it is a lot more valuable and rare than we recognize today. And no one is buying groceries with Bitcoin. They keep that stuff. You spend your US dollars that you don't want. Those are easy. You keep the Bitcoin, right? So the strategic wealth reserves are a brilliant idea. The one thing about Bitcoin is that it's not fast. It doesn't transact quickly, but it is a real reserve. I think that you're going to be doing like big deals and real estate transactions and things like that on the most notable, things like Bitcoin. But talking about another major would be Ripple, XRP. So, the SEC made this very interesting stance against it in January of 21. Bank of America had been utilizing it for 100% of their internal transactions for approximately 2 years, and it was shut down. And so this really efficient system, the second largest coin, now is way back because of how it was regulated. So that regulator is getting out now, Gary Gensler, and so and President Trump's met with the CEO of Ripple a couple times, and so I personally think that Ripple is being looked at by the United States as a SWIFT system alternative, as we are looking at digitizing, tokenizing, and Ripple has the ability to kind of be like the internet and be this platform that could be the guardrails of the future, where we tokenizing with HBAR and XLM and different coins like this. But it's an exciting time. I'm just looking for the application so that we can now start talking to regular folks every day, and we can say, this is how this changes your life, not just here's the technology's name.
Well,
okay, there you go. We're going to go into the DAIXRP.com, the private group. If you'd rather go to join through YouTube, click the join button below any of these videos, or you can go through X and hit subscribe. I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe, hit the like button, tell your friends and family. Away we go.